Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to start off by welcoming you to this workshop, right? Like it's the kickoff to the next 12 weeks. So yeah, welcome. This is Leadership Pulse, Relationship EQ, and Influence and Action. And I want to just hop right in, right? Because the workshop today is not just a workshop about relationships, right? It's a kickoff to the next 3 months. So if we look back, right, the first half of the year, we did a lot of work about internal stability, mindset, emotional agility, and protecting our baseline. So here we sit, right? So for the whole next chunk of time here, right, the next 12 weeks, this next quarter, right, we're going to start applying that work where we make contact in our worlds, right? So in real relationships, in real communication, and the discomfort and conflict and influence that comes along with that, and real boundaries and reciprocity. Okay, so I want to say something real clear before we get too into it, right? I want you guys to be able to put this down. And I know because it's difficult for a lot of folks, but this isn't a workshop about blame. It's not about how to finally get other people in and around our worlds to start acting right. It's not about how to say and structure the perfect sentence so that these difficult people that we find ourselves in and around, right, suddenly become emotionally mature, in our opinion, right? This is not a space that's about becoming more polished while still being privately unled. And I definitely want you to hear this, right? It's not about learning quote unquote prettier language while the same old relationship pattern is still quietly running your whole show. Okay. This is about what happens inside you when a relationship gets activating. Yeah. Because this is it's where most people lose themselves, right? When the relationship gets activating. And what happens, right? They over explain, over function, get sharper than they meant to, find themselves guilt driven, they shut down. Some of y'all, right, just try to manage the room and fix all the things that aren't really yours to fix, and take on what belongs to someone else, and calling it love, calling it patience, maturity, flexibility, or even being a good person. This is what I know to be true. Okay. A lot of people do not have a relationship problem first. Okay. It's not what's first. They have a self-leadership problem inside relationships. If that sounds blunt, good, right? Because I want this to be clean. And the reason is if you don't know what's yours, what's theirs, and what is just the dynamic between you, you're going to spend your life leaking emotional authority in these contacts that you make with other people, and calling it normal. So that's what we're going to be cleaning up over the next 12 weeks. But today's going to be a really good overview, right? So the goal here is not to become colder, harder, care less, or stop caring at all, right? And it's not to win, right? The interaction. It's to stay in personal leadership within it. And that's very different. Okay. So I want to start with one simple question, and I highly recommend getting a pen and a paper and writing it down, and then really giving yourself time to think about it, especially as we go through this workshop, which is of course the overarching right event to the next 12 weeks as we break things down. Okay. I want you to ask yourself, when a relationship gets hard, it doesn't matter if it's an intimate at-home relationship, it's a professional relationship, it's a social relationship, it's a community relationship, it doesn't matter. I want you to ask yourself, when a relationship gets hard, where do you lose yourself the fastest? Now, I don't want you to overthink it. I just wanted you to notice what comes up. Okay? For some of you, this might be, gosh, I lose myself in guilt. Right? Maybe you're losing yourself in urgency. Perhaps for you, it's losing yourself in all of the over-explaining, over-caring. This one, hits true for me in a lot of different ways, and I've seen it a lot, but perhaps you're losing yourself in the fact that you're taking things personally, trying to manage the room. Perhaps you lose yourself in collapsing, right? Or going sharp, like that sharp knife tone, right? I just want you to catch it, because where you lose yourself the fastest, that's where your relational authority is weakest. And that's what that's where we're going to be starting, right? Like this whole series. Okay. So I want to frame this series very clearly, because I don't want the next 12 weeks to feel like we're just talking about relationships in 3 different ways, right? Because we're not. Each 4 weeks is going to build on the 4 weeks prior to. Okay. So right here, right now, going forward into the next 4 weeks is going to be all about that relational authority, leading without losing yourself. Right? So it's all about self-leadership inside of your relationships. It's about where you lose yourself, where you overcarry, where your boundary system wobbles, cracks a leak, right? Where are you over functioning? Where you start to do that emotional labor for 2 people, right? Or more. And where you're handing your authority away when you're in contact with other beings, right? Then we'll flow into authenticity without apology. So once you start staying with yourself more cleanly, then the next question, logically to me anyway, right, becomes, can you show up, right? Can you show who you are, yourself, honestly, right? Can you tell your truth, the truth, without shrinking? Can you receive feedback without collapse or all of the standard defensiveness? Can you be transparent without exploding? And can you communicate without performance? Which will take us directly into energetic reciprocity, the currency of connection, right? Once there's more self-leadership and more honesty, right? Like, I believe that communication and assertive communication is open, honest, genuine, transparent, and authentic. Okay. So once there's more self-leadership and more honesty, we get to look at exchange. Right? Can you give without overextending? Can you receive from someone? Right? Can you receive without experiencing guilt? Can you notice where the connection has become too expensive for you? Can you recalibrate a relationship without harboring resentment? So as you can see, right, like we're going somewhere. The build is going to be lead yourself, show yourself, and exchange cleanly. That's progression. And of course, again, this workshop is just the front door. And so I'm going to touch on everything, right? Relationships surface unfinished internal material faster than almost anything else. Let me say that again. Okay. Your relationships surface your unfinished internal material faster than almost anything else, right? You can look very self-aware in private. You can look very regulated in your routine, and you can look very emotionally mature when nobody's disappointing you, when nobody's misunderstanding you, pressuring you, needing you, withdrawing from you, or even mirroring something in you that you have not fully let go of yet, or even led the way you would prefer yet, right? You can look all of those things, and then boom, somebody says something in a tone, right? Or somebody pulls back, gets disappointed, expects more than you have to give, resists your boundary, or they misunderstand your intention, and then boom, suddenly here you are, right? You're all activated, trying to manage, fix, explain. You're bracing for the next shoe, right? You're softening what you really mean, or you're hardening because you don't know how to stay clear without going into some sharp tone of voice that you've conditioned to be assertive in your world, right? This is what I mean when I say people do not lose themselves because the other person is so powerful. They lose themselves because the interaction stirs something unled inside of them. That matters so much, because if you don't understand that piece, you're going to spend your life focused on what the other person did while staying blind to what the interaction does to you. So your work's not to control them better. Your work is to become more conscious of what gets stirred up in you, and to stay in your personal leadership there. Seriously, guys, not everything that activates you is asking you to respond. Guys, right? Not everything that feels uncomfortable is asking you to fix it. Sit in and move through. Not everything emotional is factual, right? It's not always true. And not everything that is theirs belongs in your body. So I want you to pause here for a minute, and I want you to think, just think of a person or even a recurring interaction that pulls you out of yourself. Where do you go first? Do you jump into rescue? Do you go into explanation? Do you get defensive? Do you slide right into feeling guilty? And I know this one's a fact, right? Do you pop right into all that people pleasing? or perhaps you withdraw, right? That wallflower. And like, no, right? That's your data. That's your data. So I want you to, again, take note as things are popping up for you here. Now, this next piece here, right, may be one of the most important skills in this whole workshop. Okay. I'm going to start here, right? Most people are inaccurate about responsibility in all of it, right? They either overown or they underown. What do I mean? Okay. Some people take responsibility for everything, right? They're responsible for the mood in the room, the tension, the outcome, the other person's level of disappointment, the emotional labor that's needed in this time and space, the repair, the pacing, and the comfort level. While others take responsibility for almost nothing at all, right? Everything is someone else's tone, someone else's trigger, someone else's issue, someone else's mess, right? The old adage of, well, if they would only, right? Can't believe they did that. Right? Neither one of these spaces is a clean operating space. Okay, we need accurate responsibility. So I'll give you a lens to bring in with you over the next few weeks as you're listening through the weekly videos, right? Every relational moment has at least 3 layers. Okay, so here's your lens. Starting with the first one. Number 1, what is mine? That's you, right? That's you. What is yours? My body, my interpretation, my tone, how I pace myself, my boundary system, my responsiveness, right? My response is mine. My clarity is mine, and my choices are mine. 2, what's theirs? Yeah. Okay. So their mood is theirs. Their reactions are theirs, their opinion, their discomfort, their timing, their willingness, their accountability, and their emotional maturity. It's theirs. Okay, but number three is that dynamic, right? What's the dynamic? What's the pattern between us? What's the role that I keep stepping into? What's the role they keep stepping into based on my perception, right? What's the dance? Just because something's happening in front of you doesn't mean it's yours to carry. And just because you can feel it, right? Like, just because you're feeling it, man, doesn't mean it's yours to solve. Okay. If it's theirs, it's theirs. That's where people start leaking so much energy. They confuse caring with carrying. They confuse helping with over functioning, responsibility with over responsibility, and understanding with self-erasure. So I want to take this into a really real space for you, for me, for us, right? For some of you that I know are listening, but for those of you here in the room right now, if someone is disappointed, that may be theirs. If I lied, if I overpromised, or I failed to communicate clearly, right? That may be mine. If every time they are disappointed, I instantly collapse into guilt and over explaining, That may be the dynamic between us two. A lot of times our dynamic is conditioned. So if someone is in a bad mood, that's theirs. If I instantly assume that it's all about me, that's mine. If every time someone is off and I start scanning, adjusting, softening, or shrinking, that's the dynamic. Right? Do you see how much clarity this can give you when you break things down? Right? Once you can sort a moment out, you can stop drowning in it. So take a minute here, right? Take a minute and take a peek at a recent relational tension, right? A time when you're engaging or interacting with somebody. Again, it doesn't have to be a spouse, a partner, a child. It could be something social. It could be something environmental, right? Like, where were you, right? But I want you to take that relational tension and I want you to divide it into those three buckets. What's mine? What was theirs? And what was the dynamic? I don't want you to put in your justifications. I don't want you to put down who was more wrong. I just want that accuracy. What was mine? What was theirs? And what was the dynamic? Now, hopefully you pushed pause and you took a minute to do that work, right? Because I want to slide into talking about communication. And I have to say this, right? Because most people just don't know how, right? They just don't know how. They're not actually communicating when they think they are. What I see happening is people discharging, defending, proving, controlling perception, trying to get relief, trying to reduce discomfort, trying to make the room feel better super fast, right? So they can stop being uncomfortable. And none of that is communication. All that is activation with words. Okay. And this is why people say all the right things and still get that same old bad outcome. Because regulation comes before effective communication. So if your body is loud, your tone's going to leak that. If your nervous system is flooded, right, your pacing is going to leak that. If you're guilt activated, your boundary system is going to collapse, right? You will not be able to filter anything out. If your urgency is high, I promise you that clarity goes down. So this is why calmness is not a goal, right? Access is the goal before you speak, right? So before you speak, I want you to be asking yourself, am I trying to communicate right now? Or am I just trying to discharge, defend, rescue, prove, punish, I don't know, control, right? Am I actually trying to communicate right now? Or am I trying to defend, rescue, prove, punish, control? Right? You pick your adjective because that one question is going to clean up a lot for you. And I know this, right? A lot of damage gets done by people who think they are being honest when what they're actually doing is being unled, unaccessed. When something activates you, I want you to utilize a sequence and really spend time getting to know how that works, right? Like, so I want you to use this sequence. We'll call it your relational pause, right? I want you to stop, breathe, name what is happening internally for you, and choose the cleanest next move. Okay. I'll explain. Okay. Stop, because speed is where a lot of people lose their authority. Knee jerk, word vomit, bleh. Yeah. Breathe, because your body needs a chance, right, to stop treating everything like it's an emergency. And I want you to name it, not as a giant story or an excuse, right? Just a simple naming, right? Like, I feel pressured. I feel defensive. I feel guilty. I feel myself wanting to explain. And I feel myself trying to manage them, right? So then you get to choose the cleanest next move, right? So it's almost like utilizing the core non-physical feeling check-in. Boom. You're engaging and you're interacting with another being. Stop, breathe, name it before moving on. Because your next cleanest, clearest, accurate, accessed next move might be speaking. It might be asking a question. It might be slowing down the room. And it might be saying, I want to answer this well, not quickly. And it might be saying, I need a minute, right? Like, I don't know how I think, feel, believe about whatever it is, right? Like, I need a minute. So this time I really want you to utilize the pause button in this video, right? And think of a moment where you wished you had slowed down before speaking. And tell yourself honestly, right? What would the cleaner, clearer, more accessed next move have been? Now, if we're going to talk about communicating, we have to talk about active listening. Because people either do not do it at all, or they do it in a way that becomes more like self-abandonment, right? Like, let me tell you, listening doesn't mean agreeing. Listening doesn't mean surrendering your reality. And listening does not become responsible for the other person's internal world. Listening means gathering information in a clean, concise, clear way. And most people are simply, believe me, I watched this one because I have to work at this, right? So what I see is most people, right, are super terrible at it, because while the other person is talking, you can almost see it. You can just see it happening, right? They are ready already, right? They're building the rebuttal while the other person is still talking. They're getting defensive. You can see it, all the things, right? They're making it about themselves. They're editing their image and they're waiting for that next opening so that they can go into explaining. And that's not listening. That's self-protection disguised. And I'll do this the best I can, right? I'll give you this, right? It's self-protection disguised as attentiveness. I don't even know as though it's that good, right? So I want you listening on 3 levels here. Okay, when you're listening to somebody, I want you to be listening for the content. What are they actually saying? Second one, emotion. What feeling is underneath what they are saying? And meaning, what is this meaning to them? Now, I get it. That's a lot of presumptions and presumings. Uh, um, your own translations are getting, put under them, but I promise it'll make sense, right? But because here's the deal. When you can track content, emotion, and meaning, right, you stop reacting only to the surface language. When you stop reacting only to the surface language, you get less defensive, less impulsive, and more precise. Okay. So what comes after is the better part, right? So if you're listening that way, then you can say things like, what I hear you saying is XYZ. Okay. You could try, it sounds like what mattered most to you was, personal favorite of mine is, let me make sure I understand. And another one I really like is, so what landed for you was, right? That slows the room down, that slows the engagement interaction down. And let me say this really clearly, right? Listening well does not require you to lose yourself, right? You don't have to agree in order to understand. You don't have to absorb in order to listen. And you don't have to carry the emotional labor for both people to be relationally skilled. Okay. What you're doing is you're slowing everything down. You're listening to them. You're accumulating your interpretation and you're giving it back to them for confirmation that your interpretation, right? Anyway, but you're also showing them a lot of other things. Anyway, so think of a recent conversation where you got reactive. And really think about one. And I know everybody's like, oh, I can't think of any. But, and if you can't think of one, all right, you can't think of one. Push pause here. Go observe how you engage and interact with other people, right? Because I want you to be able to ask yourself, what were they actually saying? What were they feeling? What was it meaning to them? And then what did I make it mean before I had enough data? That's the listening gap. Remember, I said you're giving back to them your interpretation of the words you heard them say. And we don't do that part. We need to clarify that what we make it mean is accurate. That's where we get the data, right? This is the listening gap. Now, conflict. This one is quite interesting, right? Because, sure, we have our partners, we have our, family members, we have social, we have professional, we have just community, right? All of these different things. But we also have, and I'm going to bring this in just because I think in today's world, it's truly critical that we when we talk about conflict, we talk about internal conflict based on things like I can't maybe ask, right? Somebody that I don't know has done an interview that I'm listening to that is activating for me. I can do my interpretation, but I maybe can't get the clarity, right? Like anyway, right? So internal conflict as well as conflict with other people, right? Most people only have one of three bad conflict strategies, okay? They collapse, they control, or they over-explain. They shut down, they smooth it over, they get guiltier, they give in, or they get louder, sharper, more controlling, more corrective, or they talk in circles for 10 minutes, trying to manage the tone, outcome, meaning, and the other person's whole internal state all at once. Okay. None of that is conflict resolution. Okay. Real conflict skill requires that you stay present right here, right now. Slowing meaning down, separating fact from your interpretation, staying on the actual issue, and not trying to win, right? The goal is not to win the interaction. It's to stay in your personal leadership within it. That literally changes everything. Now, you can start asking yourself some bigger, better questions, right? When you get to this phase. Instead, it can sound more like, what is the actual issue here? What am I assuming? What am I making this mean? Okay. That's my interpretation. What outcome am I trying to force? What resolution? Right? What would resolution require? If I stopped trying to win and started trying to be clear, right? It could be a lot of different categories, multiple people, groups of people, whatever it is. Could just be in a personal relationship, engagement, right? But we got to break it down. So cleaner conflict language, right? I'll give you a few examples. So instead of, you always, right? You can try something. You can try something else, right? You can say, here's what I'm noticing. Instead of saying, that's not what happened, right? Try saying, this is how I experienced it, or here's what I experienced. Instead of saying to somebody, you just don't understand me, right? You can try, I don't think I said that clearly enough. Right? So less accusation, more clarity, less forcing, and more personal leadership, right? Or just leadership, right? You get to lead the room. You get to lead by example of how you want to be experiencing this exchange. And conflict is just part of communication, right? In conflict, you want to be asking yourself, you need to know about you, right? Which direction do you go first when you get to conflict? Do you collapse? Do you try to control? Are you over explaining? The answer is going to tell you a lot about your conditioned way of being. Right? Conditioning is a big deal. It's something that requires some attention. So let's take a breath here and really bring this series all back in, right? We're going to start out in the first 4 weeks, right? Asking and working on and looking at, can I stay with myself in a relationship? Can I stop losing myself? Can I set boundary, right? Can I have an energetic boundary system without guilt? Can I hold that? Can I influence without force? Where the next set of 4 weeks or the next series, actually, this is all a series. So, right, the next transition, the next 4 weeks, can I show myself? Can I show up? Right? Honestly. Can I show myself honestly? Can I tell the truth without shrinking or exploding? Can I receive feedback without becoming defensive or collapsing? Can I build trust through clean, open, honest, genuine, authentic communication? And then we'll wrap it all up with, wow, can I exchange energy cleanly? Can I give of myself without overextending myself? Can I receive from others? Can I allow it to be reciprocal without feeling guilt? And can I recalibrate a relationship before resentment takes over? This is what the next 12 weeks, this is why it all matters. Because some people try to jump to trust before they have the internal authority. Some try to jump to reciprocity before they know how to stay with themselves. Some want a deeper connection while still abandoning themselves in contact with other human beings, right? None of that's going to hold. So this quarter, this 12-week period, right? It's not random. It's very developmental. First, you get to plug up in any leaks. You get to stop performing, and then you get to stop depleting. Wow. So let's land this here on a really good, solid foundation. The goal here is not to become harder. It's not to control people better, and it's not to win every interaction. It's to become clearer, to stop losing yourself within them, and to stay in your personal leadership within interactions. Okay. And the question I want you leaving with right now is this: what here is mine to lead? And what here is not mine to carry? Because everything changes when that gets clear. I want you leaving today asking things like, where do I lose myself fastest in a relationship? What am I constantly carrying around that isn't mine? What communication move do I need to clean up first? Where do I overfunction? Where am I over explaining? What areas of my life am I collapsing in? Where do I try to manage what belongs to somebody else? And what would my relationship authority actually look like for me in real life? That's the work. So it's not anything at all about being perfect, cold, invulnerable, right? It's just cleaner. It's just clearer. It's just accuracy, right? More internally led, relationally skilled, trustworthy in your own personal authority. So you don't feel that need to control people to stop losing yourself within them. Everything changes. right? When you know what is yours to lead and what's not yours to carry. Relationship EQ means very little if you continue to disappear inside the interactions. Okay, so if this conversation is hitting something real for you, then don't leave it at insight. Because insight is useful, but insight alone does not usually change the patterns. If you know that you lose yourself in a relationship, in your engagements and interactions, again, doesn't matter if it's personal, social, professional, right? If your boundaries, right, those boundaries, limits and limitations, that whole system gets shaky when someone reacts. If you overfunction, over-explain, if you're over-carrying or keep organizing yourself around other people's moods and responses, then this quarter, right, is meant to be worked and not just heard. And that's what we do inside the Insight and Impact Focus Group. Sure, right? You can follow this series, right? This recorded series, or you can come join us in the deeper room, right? That's where we take the monthly theme and we actually apply it. It's where we stop just naming the patterns and start building cleaner ways to lead ourselves inside of it. It's where the work becomes deeply personal, more honest, and more usable in your real life. If you're not stepping into that deeper room right now, again, you can still follow this public facing content every single week on YouTube, right? I'm going to be teaching the public layer for this quarter, right? All the way through. So the next 12 weeks, you can get all the information. Whichever layer fits you right now, stay in the conversation. Don't just admire the pattern. Work it. So I'll either see you in the room with us in our live action-packed group, the Insight and Impact Focus Group, or I'll see you right here on YouTube following along. Thank you so much for being here.